Hello and welcome to Media Week. I'm Ingrid Willinge. Ahead on the program, we'll get the latest on the changes to Seven West Media's board, plus the fallout from Q&A this week as an urgent government inquiry into the matter is announced. Our co-host, as always, James Manning, editor and publisher of Mediaweek, joins us in the studio. First up, though, it has been a huge couple of weeks for Network 10. Now, not only has it announced that deal with Foxtel, with a subscription television service investing a near 15% stake in the network, but 10's also done a critical deal with MCN. And in addition to that, media analysts have been out saying the turnaround strategy at 10 has been working and the worst could now be behind it. Well, for more on all that, we're joined by Hamish McLennan, Chief Executive and MD of 10 Network, in the studio with us. Hamish, thanks so much for joining us on the show today. On, as I mentioned, what's been a really busy week, of course, or couple of weeks for you. Let's kick it off with that deal with 10, with you guys and Foxtel, of course. What sort of benefits does the tie-up bring? This is leaving out the MCN part of it for the moment.
Well, we'll look for ways in which we can sort of co-fund programs together, but a big part of it actually is the MCN deal, where we're looking for ways in which we can get some scale. We've had a few hard years. We're sort of confident the business is turning the corner, but when you look at our competitive set, if you look at 7 and 9 in particular in the free-to-air space, those two companies have about 80% of the market, so we need to find ways of getting more competitive and taking them on.
Hamish, do you think Foxtel might have wanted a bigger stake than 15% if the media laws would have allowed it, and how would you have felt about that?
Look, I'm not aware if they wanted to go beyond 15%, but you raise a good point. If you look at the media laws designed in a pre-Google era, I think the government has to do more to look at reforming the media market. So the very fact that our competitive set now, even beyond 7 and 9, is Google, Apple. These companies are multi-billion-dollar companies. Google has a market cap of $370 billion. They've got $65 billion worth of cash sitting in the bank, and they're the people that we're competing with at the moment.
So you're surprised the government abandoned those media reforms just last week?
I was actually disappointed. We've been saying for a couple of years now that we need holistic change and we need them to be looked at in every angle. And the very fact that our competitive set, you can be a broad brand streaming service and you can take viewers away from free to air, they're not covered by the current laws. And it's very critical that the government take it on and they look at how they can reform the market.
Do you feel partly responsible for that, though? Because the government said, look, it just got too hard dealing with you guys, and there was no sort of unanimity between the players.
I think it's the government's job is to lead the debate. We've said let's look at everything in one go and not look at just pulling the reach rule or one other aspect of the way the laws are currently constructed, because it just doesn't make sense. It's actually nuts.
Will you continue pushing the government for change?
Yeah, we will, and we have done for a couple of years, and we just hope that they get inspired to do that, because it's hurting traditional good businesses like ourselves.
All right, let's get back to the deal, because MCN, that part of the deal, very significant. Obviously, we had Anthony Fitzgerald on the show last week, and he was talking about it really being a big disruptor. Yeah. So how do you expect this to disrupt the current TV wars?
Our immediate competition to 7 and 9, we just need to put a more competitive offering to the market. So we have two similar sized businesses, so we've gone from 4 to 3 players in that regard, and I think what it means for advertisers and the media buyers is that they have 3 strong groups to choose from, and I think that scale, we're looking at ways in which we can get a bit more heft in the market, because we've been really dominated by them for some time.
When you made the announcement, you paid tribute to the 10 sales team under Louise Barrett for the hard work they'd done through what was a pretty difficult period. Is it, in a way, a bit ironic that MCN might prosper from the hard work or the audience growth you've got this year when MCN starts selling?
Well, look, absolutely, but we are combining the two sales forces together. Lou's done a great job, but the simple fact is that we've had 3 sales directors in 3 years, and Lou stepped in at a time when we were very shaky. So our shares are rising, but at the end of the day, we're looking for ways of getting scales and sharing technology and platforms and so forth, and that's really important for us. So we'll combine the teams, and I think we'll have a very good offering at the end of it.
We know as part of the deal, obviously, a Foxtel rep will be joining the board. Yeah. Do you expect it to be Foxtel CEO Richard Freudenstein, or...?
It's really up to Foxtel. We haven't got an indication who they want to place on the board, so we'll wait and hear who that is once the deal's approved, if it is. Yeah.
What about in terms of the shrinking board? Because we know 10 is shrinking its board. Yeah. Any sort of timeline on when we might hear who's in and who's out?
Look, it's all subject to ACCC approval, so we'll just wait until that gets put through, and then we'll announce who's on the board.
You have an option to get into the Presto business too. We talk on the show a lot about the growth of the streaming here in Australia. Yeah. Figures this week showed Netflix has got a really pretty good hold on the market. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, look, Netflix have got more than 1 million subscribers in 3 months, which is quite phenomenal. I think that also indicates just how competitive the TV space is, and they're competitors that we didn't have to deal with, 1, 2 and 3 years ago. So, I think the whole point for us is that, we need to take on, more scale where we can to look at all these overseas players.
Yeah.
So with the stake you might take in, you've got the option obviously to take up that stake in Presto, that 10% stake, for 2 years. Obviously, Seven has only the equity TV in the TV side of Presto. Yeah. Do you expect to take both if you were to take up the option?
We'll wait and see. I mean, the whole point of that was that we see that it is a critical and important part of the business, but we're getting a far better return from launching shows on Channel 10, the main channel, and monetising it. So we're staying very focused to our core strategy.
Talk to us about 10 Play. You seem to have done a really pretty good job building that. I think we've talked before about that.
Yeah.
Where could that go in the future? Could that become almost a default streaming service?
Look,
or
you could hang a transaction engine
or...
off the side, but look, it's a catch-up service. We've got those rights which we negotiated many years ago on behalf of all of our programs, and that's sort of important that we keep it pure like that for now, but it does offer a lot of potential in the future. But we're just very focused on maintaining our strategy around 10, 11 and 1, launching those shows, monetising them, as I said before, and then 10 Play is a critical part of that. And we'll see how the market evolves in the next 2 years. I mean, I think it is very, very challenging for all 3 players in this market. I don't think we have a market big enough to sustain 3, so we want to hang back a little bit and see how it goes.
Do you write much revenue off 10 Play? And does MCN think they might be able to get a bit more?
Yeah, look, 10 Play, again, look, it's all about getting scale with the various assets within the group, but we're getting double-digit growth year on year, and 10 Play is going very well for us. But again, we're just remaining focused on what we do.
And where do you expect to put the cash from Foxtel, the new investment from Foxtel? I mean, is it also looking towards potentially shared content deals with Foxtel and 10, and whether there be sport or other programming?
Look, that's an opportunity. We're going to look at the whole gambit, all the genres that are out there. We have a low-cost model. We'll pay down a little bit of debt. We'll look at strategic programming choices that we can make, and then we'll just look at every bit of programming when and if it comes up. The AFL and the NRL are out there at the moment bidding their sports rights. Potentially that could be an opportunity for us. But again, I don't want to tip my hat to the competition. We'll wait and see how it goes.
Nobody wants to do that. But so people talk a lot about the sports rights, but you don't think it's being overstated, the importance? Because it seems to be a critical part of the TV.
Well, yeah. No, look, we've stated that we won't overpay for any sports rights. So if it just gets too expensive, we'll bow out of it. But we also have a plan for a business model without sports. So we've been very strategic in terms of what we've gone for with the Big Bash, with the Sochi Winter Olympics. We've got the V8s and F1, and we're very content with that. But we'll just see how it goes with these 2 sports that are in market at the moment. Of
course, there's been talk about Google and Yahoo and those sorts of the likes bidding for sport going forward. You made some comments on it earlier, but do you think that would completely change the game?
They have the potential to do that. I mean, look at Apple alone. I mean, Apple's got a market cap of $730 billion. They've got $110 billion worth of cash in the bank. Think of Apple TV and how that's sort of transforming and making our market more competitive. These overseas players are really threatening. So if they choose to bid for these sports, I think it's going to put a lot of pressure back on the free-to-air players.
And how do you differentiate from them then when you're trying to sell advertising?
Well, it's very hard. They can put a product to air without advertising if they felt that it was going to drive eyeballs for them. So for us, I think the sporting codes then have to determine what they want. And so free-to-air positions each of those sports really well. It's a great experience, but the only way that we make our money is through advertising. So we've got to find a way of coexisting within the ecosystem.
You mentioned all that cash in the bank that Apple's got, and they also wanted Taylor Swift to give them free music, eh? They're pretty cheeky too, aren't they? Tell us about the free TV this week was successful stopping SBS from being able to move some of their off-peak ad minutes into prime time. Free TV went hard on this. They talked about it virtually SBS becoming a 4th commercial TV network if this went through. Was that a bit of overkill?
No, it wasn't overkill at all. Our collective profits are in decline, and SBS gets a government subsidy, as the ABC does. Hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars are spent on those 2 broadcasters. We took out $50 million worth of costs last year, and we kept the business afloat. And it's just, it's actually not fair to reward them for getting additional advertising minutes. They would suck more inventory and dollars out of the market, and that would be very detrimental to our business.
want to talk about some analyst comments lately, because obviously a lot of analysts have been out with notes lately. No doubt you've seen some of them about 10 potentially turning around, saying the worst is now behind you. I mean, you'd probably agree with that, but what sort of factors do you see that sort of back that up?
Look, we're the only free-to-air network and primary channel to grow at the moment, so we've had a very good run. Actually, since May of last year, we felt that we put the right foundations in place, but it's a very competitive market, and 7 and 9 are good competitors. So they currently still have, in absolute terms, larger audiences than us. They'll come back very hard, so we need to maintain our focus from a 10 perspective, but we're delighted with the fact that we've got momentum, and advertisers seem to be rewarding us more and more, but it's a marathon, not a sprint, as they say.
How's your programming slate looking from the rest of this year into next year? You'll no doubt go out with the big bang later this year and tell people about what's coming up. MasterChef obviously been a real boon for you. Can we expect Celebrity, I'm a Celebrity back next year?
Yeah, we're looking at bringing it back next year. We're going into the Great Australian Spelling Bee. We've got your favourite, The Bachelor, coming out, James, too, which will be good.
And The Bachelorette.
And The Bachelorette too. So, we're feeling very good about the slate for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
So when people say traditional TV is dying, what is your response to that?
Well, it's not, but people are consuming video in all of its forms across multi-screens. And so we have to get better at measuring the way people are viewing our content, and that's a big issue for the free-to-air industry. But it is becoming more competitive. So the very fact that Facebook are looking at, streaming movies and video is just further example of the way it's becoming more fragmented.
All right, Hamish, we will have to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Great, thank you.
Hamish McLennan there, Chief Executive of 10 Network. We do have to take a quick break on Media Week. Coming up next, though, the latest move by SBS after the Senate rejected legislation allowing it to show more ads in prime time. That's next.